What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so of course, last night was the premiere of Last Dance, a 10-part docu-series on ESPN, part of the 30 for 30 series. This was a very heavily anticipated and heavily promoted uh, series for ESPN. It was originally slated to premiere in June, I believe, after the NBA season came to a close. But because of the current circumstances, it was pushed up, and I'm pretty sure most of us are glad for that. Now, of course, last night they aired the first two installments of the series, and for the most part, most of the stuff they talked about, I was familiar with for the most part. Um, One thing I forgot though, and I've said this time to time on my channel, erroneously. For some reason, I remembered or misremembered Scottie's injury as being a back injury. You know what I'm saying? I forgot that it was actually an ankle injury, but it was not a back injury. And the reason why I sort of misremembered it as being a back injury, because I thought he had the surgery after the finals. And I know Scottie had a history of back problems. And I just remembered his back flaring on him during that season, especially in the playoffs. So for some reason, I just eventually just misremembered it as being a back injury, and then subsequent surgery, and then issues with his back for a little while. Okay, but no, it was his ankle. Um, I'm gonna focus on the Scottie Pippen situation in this video, and I'm gonna have to structure it like this. All right, so of course, Scottie Pippen was criminally underpaid by the Bulls organization. There's no doubt about that. Nobody's going to um, dispute that. He was criminally underpaid by the Bulls. There's no way in hell to justify why a guy like Scottie Pippen, who was a multiple time all team defensive player, all right, a multiple time all NBA player, multiple time NBA All Star, all right. Scottie should have had a couple of, at least one, at least, Defensive Player of the Year award, all right. Scottie, you can argue, has a very good, um, case to have been the 1994 league MVP. Okay, the fact that he only had 7 first place votes is a disgrace. Scottie's always been one of the most criminally underrated players in the history of the NBA. No one's going to dispute the fact that not only was he only the 122nd highest paid player in the league, not only that, but the fact that he was only 6th on his own fucking team in salary behind guys like uh, I think Steve Kerr and Luke Longley, I can understand totally why Scottie Pippen felt the way that he did. Okay, and for the most part, I blame management. Um, Management should have been willing to renegotiate his contract. They should have been willing to renegotiate his contract, but for some reason, they just refused to do so. Okay, um, there have been players in the past that have done that. Magic Johnson, initially signed that 25-year, $25 million contract when he first came into the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, when he first came into the NBA, that was a good contract, a great contract. But when you look at the long term deal, it's a bad contract. If it had been like a 2-year, $2 million contract, that's a great contract. Uh, but as revenues began to soar in the 80s, uh, and then you saw that Bird with Boston had a contract that was shorter term, and he was making $2 million a year. That's when the Lakers, Jerry Buss, and Magic Johnson and his people renegotiated that contract. So, you know, the Bulls could have renegotiated Jerry Krause in particular, which is being an asshole. Okay, the Bulls were notorious for underpaying their players. So, for the most part, most of the blame I put toward management. Okay, they could have given Scottie more money than that. Um, it's no excuse for that. They can sit there and give all these excuses. There's no excuse for that. Okay, um, often, for the most part, your salary, especially when you're a seasoned player, not a rookie, but when you're a seasoned, accomplished NBA player, your salary tends to determine your how much an organization values and appreciates you. And the fact that the Bulls had constantly tried to trade Scottie, whether it was trading him for Sean Kemp, or whether it was trading him for Tracy McGrady, talking about attempts, or just trading him for whoever. It's very disrespectful. So for the most part, I blame the Chicago Bulls organization, the hierarchy back then of Jerry Reinsdorf and especially Jerry Krause. But at the same time, I have to put some of the onus on Scottie Pippen. Now I understand he felt obligated to sign a long-term contract in '91 because he had a family to take care of. His brothers, his ailing father, his mother, his ailing brother. Both of them, both his father and his brother were in wheelchairs. So I knew that he felt like he had to do the safe thing, the responsible decision, making that 7-year contract deal, because as he said, you never know with injuries what can happen. But he sold himself very, very short. He sold himself very, very short with that contract. Number one, if this was 1991, this had to be, I believe this had to be during the off season between the 90-91 season and the 91-92 season. Now, in the 90-91 season, Scottie had his best year. Now, he wasn't an all-star in 90-91. He wasn't selected to the all-star team. But that season, Scottie averaged better than 17 points. I think he averaged better than 6 rebounds, maybe close to 7. He averaged better than, I think, 5 or 6 assists, 2 steals. At any rate, Scottie played at a much higher level that season consistently than he had any other prior season. He basically was a borderline all-star, okay? And after that, he would be an all-star. And you just won a championship, and you were a huge contributor to that championship team that beat the Lakers. In fact, Scottie, if my memory serves me correctly, was the high scorer in Game 5. I think he had 32 points. Michael Jordan had 30 points in Game 5. Scottie was a huge factor in that series. Scottie should have never walked away with a 7-year, $18 million contract. Scottie should have taken like a 2-year deal, maybe, with the way that salaries were exploding in the early 1990s. You had John Hot Rod Williams, no disrespect, rest in peace, making $11 million a year or something like that, $9 million a year. At that time, no, he should have signed a 2-year deal. Okay, maybe something like 2-year, $5 million or what the hell it would be. Okay, and then you come back in '93, and lo and behold, you are a 3-time champion. You are a multiple-time All-Star, all-time defensive guy. All right, you're one of the, especially if the Bulls get a sense that Michael may be getting ready to retire or whatever. But if this was earlier, this is before Mike announced retirement. You have so much more to bargain. So you have so many chips to bargain with. Now you should be making 7, 8, 9 million a year. So in that aspect, it was Scottie's fault. You know what I'm saying? He should have accepted no less than what he was worth as a player. Scottie was also wrong, in my opinion, for having that surgery in October rather than the summer. When he said that he wanted to enjoy his summer, I thought that was him being selfish. Okay. Um, Knowing that the season was going to start next year, you know, knowing that, honestly, this is my opinion. I think Scottie resented Michael Jordan. Okay, not necessarily that he hated him, but he just resented him. You know, he looked at the fact that Mike was making 30 million. Okay, in 96, 97, and then 97, 98, he was making 33 million. So if I'm Scottie Pippen, right, and I'm making only 2 million a year, and I'm the sixth highest paid guy on the team, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Fuck them. Since Mike's making all this money, let him lead this team. Fuck him. Okay, that's pretty much how he was thinking. And it got to the point where he wanted to be traded. By November of '97, he wanted to be out of there. Now, a lot of people get on Mike for saying, Scottie was being selfish. How can you say that, Mike, when you're making all this money? And why didn't you speak up for the organization to give to give Scottie more money? Well, how do we know that he didn't? Michael doesn't publicize a lot of shit. He probably did speak up to Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf and said that Scottie needs to be paid more. Okay, we don't know that, and most likely he probably did. Okay, but this is the thing you got to remember. Michael Jordan was criminally underpaid himself until those last 2 years. He was only making 2 million a year. In 95, 96, he only made like 2.5 million or something like that for the Bulls. Those last 2 years were um, him pretty much getting what he felt was his just due. And he wasn't joking about it because I remember the Bulls were pretty much forced to give him that money because the Knicks had offered to pay Mike 25 million a year. Okay, and uh, Jordan, his agent David Falk, gave the Bulls an hour to come up with an offer, or they were going to announce that he was going to sign with the Knicks. All right, then they were forced to give him that $30 million offer, and he stayed. That's how you play hardball. Okay, Mike is pretty much saying, look, I went all these years making only 2 million a year myself. Okay, at the sacrifice of the Bulls having money to sign other guys. Now, it's not Mike's fault that Scottie wasn't really good at being a pitch man or keying endorsements. That's not Jordan's fault, but that's just what kind of happened. He never was able to get endorsements. Mike offset that shit with making millions in endorsements from, whether it's Hanes or Ballpark or Radiovac batteries or Wheaties or whatever, and the majority of his money came from Jordans shoes. Scottie, you know, wasn't able to do that, but that's not Jordan's fault. So at the end of the day, man, blame is pretty much, you can put it everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I put most of it on management, a little bit on Scottie because Scottie was kind of being selfish because he could have had that surgery during the off season. All this contract shit could have been done during the off season. That's when it's supposed to be done, during the off season, because you're not playing basketball and it's not going to be a distraction during the regular season, especially when you're a seasoned team like the Chicago Bulls trying to go for a second three-peat. All that shit's a distraction, you know. And ultimately, Scottie came back you know what I'm saying, and played, and he was an integral part for those championship teams. Ultimately, Scottie, you know, I'm not saying he had huge contracts, but ultimately Scottie got paid, you know, pretty much what was coming to him with the Rockets and other subsequent teams. But the Bulls were just a fucked up organization, man. When I look back on it, they were a fucked up organization. And I know I shouldn't say this, man, because the man's deceased. But a part of me as a Bull fan will always hate Jerry Krause because he let his ego get in the way of one of the greatest dynasties of all time. I still think the Bulls could have eked out one more title in '99. It would have been tough. I think it would have been an ugly series. I think Michael, Scottie, Tony, I think those guys would have shot terrible field goal percentages just because of the fact that the Spurs were a great defensive team, just because of the fact that they were an old team. They would have been even older. And the fact that just the interior presence of Robinson and Duncan, it would have caused a lot of, you know, I would have seen a lot of missed shots, a lot of block shots, you know, a lot of forced shots. But I think the Bulls could have eked out a championship against the Spurs, maybe in a 7-game series. I think it might have been the first series to go 7. But anyway, at any rate, great series and great perspective on one of the great dynasties of all time. But tell me what you guys think.